New episodes of the Birdie Golf Club podcast are out every single Tuesday. Make sure to follow, subscribe on whatever platform you're on to not miss an episode.
Always looking for when I'm trying to coach is that the person grasps it without me have to understand it and give a 10-minute dossier on what needs to change. Everyone really uses a form of AimPoint on tour. Either their caddy uses it or they use it.
Welcome into another episode of the Birdie Golf Club podcast. Great to have you. I just want to get to some breaking news that's come across my desk just as I was about to record this introduction for this week's episode, and it's from the PGA Tour. So I thought it was well worth just reading out, digesting together, and then we're going to get to our guest for the week. So the PGA Tour have issued this statement I'm reading via Instagram. I'll read it in whole. As the 2026 PGA Tour season begins this week at the Sony Open in Hawaii, I wanted to provide an update to our fans on recent player developments that have been in the news, as well as the PGA Tour's response to this unique situation. Since becoming CEO last year, my primary focus has been a commitment to our fans to create the best version of the PGA Tour. I promised that together we would respect the past while building the future, challenging ourselves to reach new fans and create a tour that both reflects the best of sports competition and retains the elite competitive environment our fans expect every week. I've been fortunate to hear and learn from so many of our fans on what makes the PGA Tour special, along with the ways we can further enhance the drama and consequence of competing at the highest level of the game. And one thing has been clear across each of those conversations: you all want the best players in the world competing against each other more often. On December the 23rd, 2025, Brooks Koepka notified the PGA Tour that his previous affiliation had concluded, and he subsequently applied for reinstatement of tour membership. This prompted our boards to evaluate how we deliver the best version of the PGA Tour for our fans, players and partners, with severe and justified consequences, which has resulted in our new returning member program. Huge. Designed to provide an alternative path back to PGA Tour competition for past members who have achieved the highest accomplishments in the game, the returning member program mandates heavy and appropriate limitations to both tournament access and potential earnings that we believe properly holds returning members accountable for substantial compensation earned elsewhere. It also includes elite performance-based criteria that requires winning the Players' Championship, Masters Tournament, PGA Championship, US Open, or the Open Championship between 2022 and 2025. Its strict limitations, which Brooks has agreed to, include a 5-year forfeiture, come on, I can do it, of potential equity in the PGA Tour's Player Equity Program, representing one of the largest financial repercussions in professional sports history, with estimations that he could miss out on approximately 50 to 85 million in potential earnings, depending on his competitive performance and the growth of the tour. At the request of the PGA Tour, Brooks has also agreed to make a $5 million charitable contribution, the recipients of which will be determined jointly. Importantly, the returning member program will not take away playing opportunities from current members. Fields will be expanded as needed. Other eligible players interested in seeking PGA Tour reinstatement must do so by the time the returning member program closes on Monday, February the 2nd. This is a one-time defined window and does not set a precedent for future situations. Once the door closes, there is no promise that this path will be available again. We will continue to aggressively pursue anything that enhances the fan experience and makes the PGA Tour stronger. This is part of our commitment to fans who expect the world's best players to compete on the PGA Tour week in and week out. So that's an open letter from PGA Tour CEO Brian Rolapp. Quite a lot to digest there. Huge implications. I think probably having a window that shuts, having literally a transfer window, which we're pretty, over here in the UK, we're we're pretty set with that in Europe. We know exactly what that is. And having this no promise of there being another time where this could happen or where the consequences wouldn't change. I mean, wow. So between now, we're sitting at January the 12th when this was announced, and February the 2nd. We're talking 3 weeks for players on Live who are thinking they would like to come back to the PGA Tour, having to make a decision. So again, let's go over those financial repercussions on this returning member. So the first one, a 5-year forfeiture of potential equity in the PGA Tour's player equity program. Now, what is that when it's at home? Okay, so it's the PIP, as it was kind of known, but PEP. So it is that thing that we see when they get a certain amount of money at certain times of the year. It's a big deal because guys earn massive sums of money based on their popularity, I believe, and how well the tour's doing and their status and everything like that. So it is large amounts of money, but it doesn't really impact the golf side of things so much. It's more of a heavy slap on the wrist for your damaged dog product, so you're not going to see that. But it's 5 years. Brooks is not an old guy. I think Brooks is 32, I want to say, 32 or 33. So, you know, he's going to be 37, 38 by the time this is over, and potentially still in his prime. So big deal for the time, but not a huge amount. And then this 5 million charitable contribution as well. And that is it. That is it. As far as, you know, you consider how much Brooks signed for, which was a huge, huge sum of money, over $100 million, I believe. It's not the end of the world for him, is it, really? And many will look at that coming back. You know, look at Jon Rahm. We're all thinking it. Look at Jon Rahm. Now, I think this is a very sneaky, it's clever, but I think this is very sneaky criteria from PGA. So Jon Rahm won the Masters in 2023, year before Scotty. Okay. So he fits that mould of player, of who they want to come back. There are others that fit the mould. You look at Cam. This is what's bad, right? They go to Live and I have forgotten their names. Cam, it's not Cam Young. Cam, the Australian Cam, him. Why has that gone out of my head? Well, because he went to Live. But he won the Open, obviously, in 2024 or 23. It was one of the two. So he reaches that criteria. Players' championships, everything like that. This is fascinating. You know who doesn't get into this? Phil. Phil does not get into this. And that's no particular. Bryson gets into this. What they've basically done, which is a masterstroke from Brian Rowlap, they've gone to the best players on Live without actually going to them, and they've set a precedent with Brooks that you can come back, you can keep all your Live money, or, you know, however much you were able to get, and whatever the fines are for leaving, you can keep that. You've got to make a 5 million charitable donation. You've got to forfeit the pit money, which they probably expected anyway, but only for 5 years. So younger guys, 5 years. The charitable donation is a positive spin on it, and they've gone to Live. The rest of the players that you took, we're not interested in them anyway. This is huge. We are going to feel the shockwaves of this for the next 3 weeks and beyond in the world of golf. This right here could be the biggest letter in golf history. Mark my words, because we thought the split and the shift and everything like that was huge. This is massive. This is the end of LIV. If this goes the way I think it might go. Now, who do I think's coming back? Jon Rahm will 100% come back. Now, what sanctions can LIV put in place for members that signed a certain amount of years, deal? It's looking at this, somebody who really doesn't benefit from this would be Tyrrell Hatton. He doesn't meet that elite performance-based criteria. So if he's to return, it's going to be a different thing for him. I don't believe he won a Players. Pretty sure Tyrrell Hatton didn't win the Players. So that's big. Also, by the way, what a win for the Players Championship. Everyone talked about it, fifth major. I think this is Brian Rowlap saying we are making the Players the fifth major as well. To include it in this list and miss out other big sort of elevated tournaments. Fifth major coming soon, I reckon. But yeah, huge news in the world of golf. The fallout from this is just going to keep coming, basically. Straight away, Brian Bro's in on it. Does that mean Wesley isn't suspended anymore from playing YouTube scrambles? Bigger fish. There are bigger fish with this sort of announcement. Yeah, it's. I mean, this could be monumental. Bryson, Jon Rahm. I mean, you take those two away from LIV, just those two alone. I mean, that would be a huge hit. And then who's not saying that there might not be another type of transfer window that happens here, and perhaps the criteria changes. So this is the elite performance criteria or elite player criteria. What happens if there's not just a level down from that? A wonderful Wednesday window. I don't know. Anyway, massive news in the world of golf. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Get into the comments, leave your thoughts, head over to Instagram, send me a DM what you think's going to happen. And this is going to be a pretty unbelievable next few weeks. More to that will come on the podcast without a doubt. There'll be news. So I'll try and bring it you every week, up to date as I can. And let's see who's coming back. Brooks Koepka, back. Field sizes increased. Pathway reinstated. Brooks at the Players again. That's nice, isn't it? That's just a nice thing to see. Let's hope more of them come back. And again, it's not because I'm against LIV Golf. It's just it depletes a product, doesn't it? When you share the wealth amongst 2-3 tours, bring them all back together, and let's see what happens from there. But hell of a statement from the PGA Tour, really, really is, and very, very interesting. But hey, I had to bring you that. That was exciting, needed to be said. But this week's guest is brilliant. I went to go and see James Sharpe. We had a little back and forth, very friendly, as I say in the episode on Instagram, just regarding AimPoint, and he very kindly invited me down to East Brighton, where I've been quite a few times, and said, "Look, I'll teach you AimPoint, and you, if I don't change your mind, don't change your mind." But it's worked amazing for me, and I just want to share that with as many as I can. So I'm not too stubborn to not look at change and to treat it as a learning experience. So went, and of course everything was frozen, as you can guarantee. Couldn't get on the greens. But what James did kindly do is give me a lesson, which has been just game changing for me early doors. He's taught me things in my swing that I never thought existed. It was honestly amazing. And James is a fantastic relayer of information and making it pertinent and cohesive and digestible for you, which is what's great. It was honestly transformative. Since that, I've been practicing a lot because I've sort of fallen in love with strike again, pretty much. Been using the strike wedge just to guarantee that I am getting the feel of ball first contact, but the changes I've made, I'll maybe go into them a bit more depth in future when I've definitely locked in a bit more with it. But it's been transformative. James is on Skillist, which I know we talked about with Andy Carter as well earlier on in the podcast, and it's a really great app. I've been using it since the lesson with James just to go back over all the things he sort of taught me and to use the Shadow Pro feature, which was great because when I was at the range, it was basically giving me a proper range session broken down into as many balls to implement the changes that I've made. So it literally takes that lesson and shadows you on the range with it, which was awesome. So couldn't more highly recommend James. I'm going to make sure, I keep saying this in an episode sometimes and I forget to put it in the description, but in the description will be a link to James's Skillist page. He does free evaluations. Send him over your swing. He'll come back to you and you can go on from there. Great guy. I hope you're going to enjoy this conversation. I have to apologize. Sometimes when I take this podcast on the road, I can't guarantee the same quality as when I do it from home. I haven't got the setup yet. I don't have somebody sitting behind the camera to tell me when things have gone wrong. This podcast is still in its development. So the audio quality wasn't amazing. Unfortunately, we kind of got cut off a couple of times because the camera stopped recording. And I've learned a few lessons from it and I'm going to apply it to future podcasts on the road on how I'm going to do things. But stick with it. It's broken into two sections, but hopefully I've been able to combine them so you don't notice too much. And I've improved the audio as best I can. So hopefully it's still listenable for you as the listener. Thank you so much to everyone that listens. And let's head to this week's episode with James Sharpe.
Well, James, first of all, thank you very much for having me down. It was nice to have you down and hopefully improve some of your golf. Yeah. So we had a lesson. It was really interesting because it's kind of those things that I would never have been able to prescribe myself. Yeah. I think we discussed it. Maybe you could talk to it a bit more. Yeah. I was trying to do a little too much, almost in the swing to get things where they needed to be. I think you were trying to get in the right places, weren't you? But understanding how you get that. Right, and that goes with everyone that comes in. I think if you've looked on YouTube or you've looked on Instagram, or even if you've had other lessons, sometimes understanding the cause and effect in the golf swing. So for you, obviously, you were coming down. You kind of knew that you were coming down steep in history, and you've learned a way of getting it to not come down steep. Mm-hmm. But you never addressed the bad body angles that you had. Yeah, to start with, and that's what we really spoke about. Mainly was literally getting body angles right. Everything feels easy, and that was your feedback a lot of the time, was that it feels a little bit more natural. Yeah, it feels nice and it feels simpler, which is the main thing really that I'm always looking for when I'm trying to coach, is that the person grasps it without me have to understand it and give a 10-minute dossier on what needs to change. Yeah, I think it's important to know I'm coming away today from the lesson with James by thinking not about 1,000 different thoughts, which always people who listen to the podcast know, for years, I stayed away from golf lessons because everything I'd seen was telling me that I'm going to come away with just a head full of swing thoughts. And it is the old adage, and it's not how they actually are, but especially sometimes that is definitely true. I see too many people when they've had a lesson and you listen to what they're trying to do, you go, well, I hope that isn't what you've been told. I hope it's your interpretation. Yeah. And from a professional standpoint, I don't think that it is always
their interpretation. I do think that sometimes people make it a little bit more complicated than they need to, whether that's because they don't understand it well enough themselves or whether that's just their style of coaching. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's certainly not my style of coaching.
Yeah, I felt like with your lesson, like there was personality involved in it as well, in the sense of like you could relate things to your game and then translate that. Sometimes there can be a bit of a detachment between like, this is your fault. You know, I mean, that kind of idea. And then you come away sort of not only with 1,000 faults, you sort of feel bad about your game. It's nowhere near to know where it should be. And these
Not stupid.
Exactly, yeah. But, you know, when we broke things down, I'm coming away from it thinking actually my golf swing's simpler now with the ideas anyway, a way away from implementing it, making it work.
I don't think you're that far away. I mean, we only had an hour in there and you were pretty close to where we wanted it. Obviously, it wasn't exactly where we wanted. You don't expect that, but to be able to do that in that short space of time without me really having to push you into positions, it shows that you did understand it and you could relate it to what we wanted you to relate it to.
James preferred not to touch me, so it was a kind of idea.
Exactly. So it's far away from you as possible. It's actually a stick. There's no point poking. I think that what you said there is about relating. I think that's one of the benefits of my background as a player is that I still play, I still compete, and I still go and see people myself for my own game. I'm not in a position where I can coach myself because I think that's almost impossible. You can't see yourself in real time and you can't objectively look at your own golf swing without seeing the things you don't like.
Yeah.
But I can relate to that journey of trying to master it. We're all trying to master this sport, aren't we? Some will get further down the line than others, but no one's ever going to master it fully. And you're just trying to pass on some of the things that I've learned over that period of time that I think might be helpful for you. Because at the end of the day, I've been doing it for a long time and I've made plenty of mistakes and I've misunderstood things plenty of times, which has possibly got me to a point where I can explain it in such a simple way.
Yeah. Well, let's explore that. I always ask guests the same question pretty much every week if I remember, which has happened quite a few times where I haven't. But what's your earliest memory of picking up a golf club, being at a golf course, whatever it might be? What's your earliest memory?
So I'd say there's probably two. One would be before I actually started playing golf. I remember kind of just chipping with some balls around the garden with my dad's clubs. And I'm pretty sure they'd gone shopping or something. And they got back and my dad wasn't very happy at the fact that I had his golf clubs out and was chipping them around. And maybe they should have taken the hint earlier that I was interested in golf. But really it started in year 7. My school did an activities week. It was the last week of term. Rather than watching stupid DVDs, doing some different things. So golf was one of the options. I think game design was another. And so some cool ideas. And I think it was more that the teachers, 2 of them played golf and they wanted an excuse to play golf for the week. So that's fair play. Absolutely, yeah, understand that. And my birthday was like 2 weeks before that. So it was the only birthday present that I didn't know what I was getting. And I've got a set of golf clubs. It didn't last long, funny enough. They actually got run over at a golf club that I grew up at Hoyingbury within about the first 2 months of having them. Long story, but the guy had been in the bar for a little bit too long, drove over the clubs and gave me a bit too much money for the clubs that I'd had. So I upgraded them pretty quick, which was nice. But I was hooked on golf very early. I think that whole summer holiday I was playing, I had a friend who played. So I'd say the earliest memory, as I say, is me chipping around the garden, but really it's that first summer. Just falling in love with golf and playing every day and never expecting to get as far as I did.
So when did things like progress for you? So I'm guessing then you probably took to competitions relatively young as well?
Yeah, so I started when I was 12. First junior membership was about 6 months after I'd started playing. So I made the decision, well, my mum and dad made the decision I didn't spend my money, that they would pay for my membership. It wasn't expensive at the time at Hollingbury, so you got your handicap. And a couple of our mates were playing at the time, so they were already members. So it was kind of a no-brainer. I would say it probably took me 15, 16 when I got down to single figures. So 3 years to go from 43, my first handicap, to got down to 9. I remember actually, it was funny enough, it was at this course, it was the first time I broke par off 9, 3 under par off 9, didn't win the tournament. This idea that the new handicap system is broken, it's been broken for me a year, don't worry about that.
Tournament's been rigged for quite a while.
Yeah, exactly. I went from 9 to 4 in about 3 days on the old system, which I don't know if you can remember the old system. That was a pretty big cut. And that was around 15, 16 before I then went to college. It was never great. as an amateur. I mean, obviously got down to scratch, so some people will go, "Oh, not great, well, that's pretty good," but not in terms of going on to be a pro and winning the amount that I've won. Yeah, we probably wouldn't have predicted that at 16, 17. Certainly wouldn't have predicted it. I don't think I ever really foresaw a future in golf that was a career. I mean, I just played it because I enjoyed it. It kind of just fell that way.
What do you think was holding you back at that time?
I mean, I was self-taught up until when I went to college.
Okay.
So I look back at some of my old swings and they were pretty bad. But in some respects, that was a good thing because it allowed me to just develop skill and my own kind of understanding of how to swing the club, as much as that's maybe caused problems in trying to change habits over the years. I think the skills are always the most important parts of golf. I think that does get overlooked sometimes. It's from amateurs when, like you say, when you go and have a lesson, you're changing the technique, but you're changing it to try and control the skills better. Sure. So my first real proper lesson was at college. That was probably the time that held me back the most in terms of I hadn't had any lessons and then suddenly I had to try and change my swing. And it was being 16, 17, obviously there's quite a lot of other distractions that were coming into your life at that time. And I guess I just navigated that better than some others did, sure, in a good respect. But I don't think you can ever look back at it as being, oh, it held me back, or it did, or it didn't, because everything leads you to where you ended up getting to. And if I hadn't have had that upbringing the way that I did, then I probably wouldn't be the coach that I am now, and I might not even be in golf.
Yeah, that's interesting you say about, so obviously being a coach now, obviously get to that, how we got to that maybe a little bit later on, but just whilst I'm thinking about it, when you talk about being a junior and learning the skills and maybe doing some things wrong, but kind of playing with it and adapting, do you think when sometimes you see juniors that are what's my way I want to put it, they're kind of overcoached,
Yeah,
and trying to perfect swings and all those types of things?
I think you see that a lot. Yeah, 100%. You see some juniors now that are, almost golf specialised at the age of 9 or 10, which to me is completely wrong. I played every sport growing up, and I'm a big believer that the fact that if I didn't have a football in front of me, I had a tennis racket in my hand. If I didn't have that, I had a cricket bat in my hand. If I didn't have that, I was doing something else. Yeah. I even gave rugby a go for one game. I broke my nose, so I gave that up. But I gave it a go. Right? Every sport possible, I would go and play, and I think that would put me in a good stead to understand just like where bits of your body are in space and time is essentially that eye-hand coordination, and that was transferable into golf. Whether it did it instantly or whether there's a better way of doing it, I don't know. But definitely, I think this specialization of younger players where they're either very technically minded or they're not allowed to practice in a way that is the way that normal juniors would practice, like putting comps, chipping comps, as much as they may not be, from a coach's standpoint, the perfect practice session. The most important thing, I think, for juniors is that they're engaged and they're enjoying it. The moment they stop enjoying it, it's when you'll see them drop off. And I've seen numerous good players that were overcoached as youngsters get to 16, 17, 18 and just go, nah, I'm not doing this anymore. Yeah, I want to go and actually have a life, or I want to go and play some other sports, because maybe they were taken out of the football team when they didn't want to, or they had to drop cricket because they didn't want to. And I think that they end up almost despising golf because of what it costs them rather than the fact that they want to play.
Yeah, that makes sense completely. I think, like what you were saying, the fun is kind of the most important aspect of it. I think when there's not other juniors around, you're locked into your own drill, your own training, all that stuff. It's kind of, you hear now people who have made it in the game and still in the game, well into their 40s and 50s, and all of them wish they were back in junior chipping competitions.
100%. I mean, I was lucky because the junior group that I grew up with, they're all my mates now. Like, we grew up, we spend all day, every day at the golf course. There's no better way to get better at golf than live at a golf course, essentially. You don't see that as much now with the safeguarding things, which is fine. Like, I get it, they need to be there. It does mean that up until the age of sort of 14, I'm left on your own at the golf course, which puts a lot of pressure on the parents to spend extra time. You know, my mum and dad would drop me to the golf course, but then they wouldn't see me again till 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock that night. Whereas now it's like the parents need to be here, which limits the amount of time that that child potentially has to practice and learn. At the end of the day, that's the biggest time for them to learn, isn't it? It's when you've got no other priorities in your life.
Yeah. You could just have fun and without a feeling of, and also parental pressure as well, right?
Yeah.
Because it carries over. You see it probably at the most in football, but with golf, your dad's over your shoulder, what's your chipping car?
I think you see it as much in golf actually as.
Yeah, is that what you found?
Yeah. It's not as open because people aren't shouting.
Okay.
But definitely you see it from the way that the kids are, and they'll go off and maybe practice, and there'll be just little comments like, oh, should he be doing that? You know, should he be better? Maybe is he better off doing this? What should he do every morning? It's like, what do you mean? What should he do every morning? It's not his job yet. Like,
That is serious.
yeah, if he wants to practice and he wants to do his stretches, then great. Like, that's amazing. That's almost a skill in itself.
Sure.
But it's not something you can force upon it. And you've got two types of parents that do that. Ones that have already been successful themselves, and maybe they can't remember being young. They just remember what they were like as almost as a professional themselves. And they just go, right, if I'd have just started a little bit earlier, I'd have been better. And they try and ingrain that at a young age. And then you've got the ones, I think it's just ignorance, really. It's where they weren't as good as they wanted to be in a given sport, and they really want that child to be really good. And they think that the best way of doing that is just force pressure. Yeah. You know, you will go to the range. Tiger Woods did it. So Tiger Woods' mum and dad were like this. And so therefore I should be like that. Well, Tiger Woods' mum and dad created an absolute winner. In my opinion, the best golfer of history, hands down. I never saw Jack play, but I can't imagine he did what Tiger could do with a golf ball. But would you want Tiger as your son, as in a human being?
Sure. Yeah.
They created a winner.
Yeah.
And if you want to create a winner, then maybe, force the kid. But that comes with some risk.
Got some heavy price to be paid.
If they don't become a winner, then societally they're at a disadvantage then, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, you see Tiger now, and he's still uncomfortable in certain situations, which are normal situations. But because of the way he's brought up, it's just golf. And to be honest, Tiger's probably stopped now. But he won't.
I can't.
Don't get me wrong. I want to see it.
But it's one of those where there's that 1% chance he wins. If I think there's a 1% chance he wins, he thinks there's a 1% chance at minimum that he's going to win.
Yeah.
And all the time you've got someone like that who even sniffs thinking he could get a win, he's going to come back and do it. And he might keep failing. Yeah, we might want to see him stop at some point, but there's plenty of times where normal people would have stopped before, and he wouldn't have done what he's done. So
he's a case on himself. Like, he is just different. If I'm looking at it like I got my ankle playing football, I'm done. You know, I'm done playing football now. The ankles, they're finished. Yeah. Tiger will go and have like 12 surgeries and get back out there again. It's just a different, like you were saying, different kettle of fish.
He's built differently. He's wired differently. And it comes back to that bit earlier when you said, do I feel like anything was holding me back? I doubt Tiger regrets too much of his upbringing, because it meant that he would lose some of the edge that he had as a winner.
Yeah.
As much as maybe he would maybe think, wish I'd been a bit of a better dad at the time. You can't be a better dad and also be an absolute killer on the golf course. And I think you see that in some of like Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth.
Yeah.
As they've started to have some parental and family responsibilities, their golf has dropped off because they can't keep up the same levels that they used to be able to.
So we're going to do it to Scotty. What we're going to do about Scotty?
Scotty's the enigma, isn't it? But Scotty sticks away from all of the other stuff.
Sure.
He's got family and golf. Like, he doesn't do marketing. He does his bare minimum of interviews. You know, he's world number one, and he doesn't care. In that respect, it's the closest thing we've seen to Tiger, not just on the golf course, but in the way that he deals with the media. He goes, I don't care whether you like me. I'm world number one. You're going to have to talk to me anyway.
Yes.
You know, if I want to go spend 2 weeks with my son, I'm going to go spend 2 weeks with my son because I'm world number one.
Yeah.
Whereas Rory, you've always felt like Rory's, he enjoys being the next Tiger. He enjoyed that, I think. But he's been honest with himself. He's not a Tiger. You know, he hasn't got that edge. And I think he enjoys having some time away from golf. I think he enjoys being the superstar that he is. Because I never get that feel with Tiger or Scotty. It was almost like it was a bit gets in the way.
Yeah, the machines. He's not a machine.
If Tiger could not do an interview, he would have not done an interview. Whereas I feel like Rory likes to get up there and give his 2 pence.
Yeah,
as he does.
Yeah, well, I was hearing him Sticks Football the other day, and he was talking about, he says he's always going to stay away from talking about Live, and even the Ryder Cup now, he's sort of said, I'm not talking about it anymore, it's done. And one of the 2 subjects he basically talked about was Live and the Ryder Cup. It was pretty shocking. He was saying that, because I'd never heard it before, we'd also heard all the stuff about his wife and just throwing him a beer and everything like that. But what he said on there was that they're actually heard an abuse of the tourmate's daughter.
Yeah,
It was just,
it wasn't good in Ryder Cup, but I don't think 99 at Brookline was worse. Was any better. I think Brookline was probably worse when you listen to what happened.
Yeah.
Yes. Look, I'm not Rory's biggest fan. I never have been. I don't like the way he flip-flops on things. And like you said there, where he goes, I'm not going to put my 2 pence in, and then he does. Rory's paid very well by the PGA Tour to toe a certain narrative. And it's very clear to me that he does toe that narrative. And when he chooses to attack Liv, it's when PGA Tour want him to attack Liv. And when PGA Tour were sort of flirting with Liv, his stance softened to, and then you can tell how those negotiations are going pretty much by how Rory's opinion progresses off. So that's why I'm not a big fan of him. So I was probably the only person that didn't want him to win.
Really?
At the Masters.
So you were watching that Masters and you're like, you want justice.
I was probably the only person celebrating Patrick Reed.
I was worried Patrick Reed was going to
I would have happily taken him.
Oh.
It's not Rory in himself. It's more the fanfare that follows him. Sure. It's a bit like, Tiger had a fanfare and I kind of felt like he deserved it. People were like, it's Tiger again. He's the only one who's going to win. Rory, I'm glad he's done it, because now when we go into the Masters, we won't have 6 months of, what do you do? But that's less. I can deal with that. Paul McGinley won't mention him every 4 shots.
Yeah. He is a roller coaster of a golfer. That's his style.
So
I was questioning whether he should check the caddies and stuff last year quite consistently.
I personally think his caddy nearly cost him. I know statistically people will say 16 or 15, 16, 17, 18. I've seen it banded around when it's a 1 in 28,000 chance. To me, that shot he hits on 15 where he hooks it 40 yards on the wind and covers the water by a yard tells me he had the wrong club in 99.9% of the time. Yeah. And he just happened to get lucky that he hooked it enough back onto the flag. Most times that's in the water, and we're talking about another choke, which is why I also think it's harsh to say that he chokes. I don't think he chokes. I think he just plays a style of golf, Seve-esque, where he's always throwing that line of not really being sensible. He lets the emotions get to him and he takes on shots he shouldn't. A bit like Phil. Yeah, Phil's thrown away many a tournament as well. Don't think he's seen as much of the choker.
No.
Right. So, as much as I don't like Rory, I do think it's harsh to call him a choker because he's had tournaments snatched from him as much as he's lost it.
Yeah.
Jordan Spieth a few years ago, I'm probably the only person on the planet that says he didn't choke that week either. Because when you watch his golf that week, he was horrendous. He was due a bad shot. We just hit it at a long time. And Rory's a bit like that. When you watch him, you just go, he's leaned in as someone who doesn't want him to win. You're always like, going to give us a chance there.
You feel like he's not going to pull away. Yeah. When he got 4 shots ahead, it's
the US Open. I'm sitting there thinking, we'll say it done. Like he's hitting shots here where he's given me hope. And if he's given me hope, he's given Bryson hope, or whoever it is that's chasing it down. I don't think he ever really looks like he's just going to cruise through a final round, which he clearly didn't.
And you look at the caddy relationship, obviously, like they're good mates and stuff. But I agree with what you said. I think he isn't a top caddy. I think he's a very good mate. And he probably takes Rory out of the moment in several occasions very well. And he said that to me, like, hey, you'd have taken a play. Okay. It was banded around like the most special comment of all time. I think 99% of people would have said that to him in that moment. Because you're trying to think, say something good. Hey, would have taken a play off at the start of the week. Kind of feels like a natural thing to say. But anyway, that's my sort of bias on Harry Diamond, whether he. But I was saying to someone, you put Ted Scott on Rory's back. And the choice is Ted Scott can lead Scotty towards sometimes.
I just don't think when you listen to Rory talk, and it comes back a little bit to why I don't like him, I just don't think. I think he employs yes men because he doesn't like being challenged. I think from the people I've heard who were in there when he went to see Pete Cowan, didn't like the fact that Pete Cowan, you can imagine Pete Cowan, the auction room, he's not going to go, oh, Rory, it's all fluffy unicorns. It's like, no, you're not doing this. Why aren't you doing this? And I don't think Rory liked it. And at the end of the day, that's part of the coach-player relationship. I'm not saying he has to like it, but I do think he would have won 9 or 10 majors had he not been like that. Yeah. Which, as someone who doesn't particularly like him, is not the worst thing in the world. But if I was advising him, I would certainly be saying, look, you know everything that you shouldn't be doing in your golf swing. I loved what he was working on last winter. I loved it because it was everything I would have changed.
I'm cold, you're cold. Winter golf is very much here. So let's dream of a better place. Or even better than dream, let's go to a better place. If you use code Birdie Double Points at Golf Escapes, it will get you double escape points on your next trip. And you can book a trip, be away in the sunshine, enjoying the beautiful weather, the fantastic golf and beautiful amenities of some of their incredible hotels that they have listed. Golf Escapes will handle the whole thing. They'll set the entire package up and you can enjoy every single moment without a worry. I used Golf Escapes to book my trip to East Sussex National recently for just a brief break, and everything was handled perfectly, to my golfing for the weekend, to my wife enjoying a beautiful spa treatment whilst I was out on course. Peace of mind, just a fantastic experience and a great team over at Golf Escapes. Head over there now, use code Birdie Double Points to get yourself double escape points on your next trip.
Well, we're back in. Sorry to all the listeners of the podcast if it suddenly broke out and I've had to clip this together.
Mentions of Rory.
Yeah. So Harry Diamond just like hacks into it. Yeah. So how dare you talk.
The animator's already set up.
That's why I don't like it. But it's all about, we're on to AimPoint. Yeah, if we haven't already got that already, we're on to AimPoint, which is the reason why I'm here. Because we had a little back and forth on Instagram, a friendly one that can be done, everyone. I sort of came at it from, you uploaded, I think it was Ryan, who's here, and hit him learning a bit of AimPoint.
So it was basically a clipped-up lesson similar to what we did today. Obviously, he's played a lot with me through the year, and when we came in pro-ams, I always read the greens for him, as I do for pretty much everyone, because I tend to find most people read the greens pretty poorly, and I read them fairly well, which, again, kind of leads into why I do and why I'm such a big believer in it. But it was just a clipped-up video of me showing him how to do it, and explaining the process behind it, why you need a spirit level, how the percentage works, and then obviously finish with him hole and putt, which was first attempt. We mentioned with our first attempts earlier, and people don't believe it, but it was first attempt as well. It was about a 3% slope putt, and you can hear out, I don't know if in the longest format one, maybe not the one that was posted on Instagram, but you can hear him kind of saying where he thought he would aim it. And he's a pretty good golfer, right? Plays E3. And he was out by sort of 2 or 3 inches on a 7 or 8 feet putt. And we were talking about how that can then affect his pace control and his start line if he's trying to match those things up, if he hasn't got the correct starting point. Because there isn't just one correct point on a breaking putt. It depends on the pace that you hit it at. AimPoint always talks about 9 inches past. You try and keep that consistent, which is one of the variables that I do like in AimPoint, where the pace is always the same. You're always judging every putt. So you never get this idea of, I just want to straighten this up by hitting it harder. Yeah. No, the break is the break. I hit it at the same pace every time. If it's left edge, it's left edge. I don't try and hit it at the centre and hit it hard. Yes. So I make the hole smaller. The hole smaller, it's already 4¼ inches. If anything, I want it bigger. So, and that was the main part of that video. And obviously you've got your beliefs on AimPoint, and I, as I said before, and I don't know if it came up on before we cut off, but we were just saying that to me, a lot of the beliefs that people have stem from like the commentary and stuff on Sky and stuff they see online. Yeah. And you have to remember that a lot of that stuff is dictated by the brands, and the brands want you to buy a new putter. They don't want you to learn a new putting system because they don't make any money out of that. And, that you could say that pretty much about anything, drivers, irons, all of the stuff that they put out. But especially in putting, I see so many people misreading putts and then automatically saying, I've pushed or I pulled it. You look at them and we go, they didn't. You were actually aiming in the completely wrong spot. They go, yeah, but it's left to right. Well, did it turn from left to right? No. Well, you misread it. Yeah. Yeah. No,
I think when you post it, you've got a beef like, do you think it's slow? And none of my issues are with that. I actually think the pace of play saga that he's going on in the game of golf at the moment
And it is a saga.
it's so dull and it's boring. I'm not funny. I don't go and play golf to race around. That's number one. Like, I don't want to race around a golf course. That's not fun. Sure, what's his name? Who's the actor? Mark Wahlberg. He might love racing around in an hour and a half. That's not for me, and that's not for 99.9% of the golf in the world.
I think as well, you've got to remember that the pace of play, and I've done a couple of videos on this before, especially in the majors, having played in some bigger events, that are TV coverage. You have to remember that there's no letting through because it messes up the TV coverage. So you haven't got a referee with every group most weeks. Like the majors, sometimes you will on the final 2 days, but there is not enough referees to go with every single group. And on the weeks where there are, pace of play is up. So if you've got a group out, first group, and they get a ruling on the first group, 10 minutes. Well, no one can go faster than 10 minutes behind time now. The next group has a 10-minute rule. Now no one can go faster than 20 minutes behind time. So by the time you get to the end at 6 hours, everyone goes, oh, 6 hours, it's too slow. But that's got nothing to do with it. You can't go any quicker because the pace of play can't be quicker because of those issues. Whereas pace of play in the amateur game is caused by a few more ignorances of not playing a provisional, not looking for 3 minutes. They look for 5 minutes, just generally not being ready to play. You don't see that on tour. And you'll see, Patrick Cantlay took 52 seconds this week to hit a driver, but he was waiting for 7 minutes on the tee. So what's the bigger problem? The fact that he was 10 seconds longer or the fact that he's 7 minutes behind? And you can say, oh, it's that portraying a slow move and juniors are going to copy him. Well, why do the commentators not just explain what the issue is?
Yeah.
What are they trying to gain out of pretending there is an issue that isn't actually there? And you called it saga. I completely agree. Not because I think that everyone should take 5 hours to get round. I think amateurs could play quicker. You could definitely speed it up without everyone feeling rushed. I think you're absolutely right. Not everyone wants to play at an hour and a half. And if a 1 ball comes up behind a 4 ball and there's no one else on the golf course, then just let the 1 ball through. Let him carry on at his pace. You carry on at yours. It doesn't need to become a thing where you go, oh, that guy's pushing us again. Let him through.
I'll let everyone, if there's a group behind and there's less of them, or to be honest, sometimes, even if it's a 4 ball, they are just either very, very good golfers, they're hitting less shots, and they're faster. And go through. I'd rather stop at a halfway hut, have a beer, and relax and play. But like you said, there is that narrative that's been written about of pace of play is an issue, and it's being copied from the very top of the game all the way down to the thing. So my AimPoint was never a thing for me where I didn't look at somebody on the telly, the things up and things like that. I think, oh, blimey, that's slowing things down. At the end of the day, if they make 2 buttons instead of 3, it'll be 5. I think my thing with AimPoint was always that I was somebody that probably struggled more with pace and putting. And one of the things that I found helped me, again, not to a great standard, and I did caveat all of this on Instagram with like, James is like, oh, way better golfer than I am. Like very clearly, as is Ryan, like it's absolutely fine. Like I'm not saying I'm a better punter, but my own experience was that pace was such a game changer for me. Whereas I basically had a sort of tip from a mate who's a scratch golfer, and he was basically saying that he always just looks back at Tiger, like when he watches Tiger putt. And he said, arguably the greatest pressure putter of all time. And he would always, get into his position, find his line, read the green as he did. And then his biggest thing was he'd stare down the hole for like an uncomfortable amount of time and hit the putt. And the pace would often overarch, whatever else he was doing. And it's probably not true, as we just said. But when I started doing that, I did find my putting got far, far better.
And I think it's the most underrated aspect of AimPoint because everyone focuses on the percentages. As I said, it's 9 inches past is the pace we're always looking at. So what I tended to find, certainly when I was practicing it at the beginning, was I would read it correctly, but my pace would be wrong. So I'd hit it 2 foot past, and before I'd pulled that. But now I was so aware of the difference that 18 inches could make to the intended line. Now my pace control became, because I was constantly trying to practice to such a high level of pace control. 9 inches past. If the ball goes in the hole and it's going 3 foot past and I'm in a pro am, I'll laugh quite often because I'm like, I've misread that, or I've not started on my intended line, but the ball's gone in the hole. So I'm not going to stand there and get upset about it. And then conversely, you'll get others where you'll go, well, I've read that absolutely perfectly and, it's bobbled offline. But I just think the average amateur, to have that clarity of what is, 2% right, and you can get really good at it. I don't believe that there's anyone out there that can't get good at it. I know some people go, I can't feel it in my feet. And you can, because when you're walking on a side slope, you don't just topple over, right? Yeah. You can feel it, whether you want to admit you could feel it or whether you're in tune enough with your balance to feel it. But that's all you're doing is reverse engineering something that you already do. And that goes back to that lesson that we had earlier where you already know how to swing the golf club. You just didn't know you knew how to swing the golf club. Sure. Yeah, that's all we had to get out of you was what can you relate it to that you already know how to do. And that's all AimPoint really does, in my opinion, is it takes something we're already good at and makes it into a way of reading the greens. And it's not foolproof, right? Even the best greens in the world are not good enough that from 20 foot, if I read it right and started online with the right pace, it can go in 100% of the time. And that's part and parcel of the skill of putting, is to accept that most of the time you're going to fail in putting. You're going to 2-putt more than you 1-putt. But the best putters in the world, they tend to give it a chance. That's what people who play with me say. I've had a lot of people say that is every putt looks like it's got a chance, and that's what allows me to then hold more putts than the average person does. And for me, it's been AimPoint, and that's been a massive change. As much as I've had putting lessons and I've worked on my technique and I know my own traits, my technique has not improved more than my green reading has in that period.
And you said that's probably, you were saying with tournaments and things like that, you obviously get all the percentages of the
green books
beforehand through the green book. Obviously, amateurs aren't getting that. So would you say in many ways it's probably more important of a skill for amateurs because they're...
I'm honest, towards the end of my time on Amateur Challenge, I wasn't actually buying the green books because I was that confident in what I was doing in my field. I didn't need the green book. And the green book was only accurate if the pin's accurate. Mm-hmm. Now, on DP World, they've got 4 people probably checking every pin to the exact yard. Some of our pins, you would be surprised how bad they were. Yeah. And even playing PGA Pro-Ams, they chuck out some pins and you go, well, that has never been... I think we had one at the biggest event last year and it said it was 40 on, but the green was 38 deep. And you look at that and you go, well, temp. Either the depth isn't correct or the pin isn't correct. And you go in and they kind of just shrug their shoulders like, it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. Of course it matters.
Hottest pin in the world.
Well, yeah, it's 2 yards off in the back of the bunker, according to the book. But it's not. It's either the green depth is wrong, which means that if I'm looking at a green book and I'm trying to find where 38 is on or 40 is on, I don't actually know which area it's on. So I can get a rough idea, and it's helpful for your setting shots. But when you're playing, you've got 2 practice rounds, you're hitting multiple shots into greens. You've probably played that tournament 3-4 years in a row anyway. You're just getting an idea of whether, how it's playing for that week. You're not really learning the golf course. I would get the green book absolutely on a new course because I would find that really helpful, more for the second shots. But it kind of comes back to that when I said, well, everyone really uses a form of AimPoint on tour. Either their caddy uses it or they use it. And I'd be surprised if anyone in the top 100, either their caddy or them. I'm pretty sure Harry Diamond, when he did AimPoint, I'd be incredibly surprised if he hadn't, because it's just, you don't see the caddies doing the reading. Sometimes you glimpse it, don't you, on the TV where you see the guy in the background. But really, we're watching so many shots that we don't see that little bit before it's in the final bit.
Yeah.
And you see it in the final round when people then go slow because the caddy's in. You go, no, caddy's been in on every putt. Like if he's in on the final round, he's in on every shot. Yes, people are not changing coming down the stretch.
Yeah, it was still going. That does make sense completely. That they've been doing that, and like you said before, it's the 1%. Right, everyone's searching for that 1%. So if AimPoint is that 1%, then it makes sense. Oh, it is a shame that we couldn't do it today because I was genuinely interested because don't get me wrong, like everyone probably listening, watching, wherever it may be, you've definitely tried it at some point with no knowledge about how it actually works.
That always makes me laugh, actually. When people watch me and then they go, oh, you briefly tell them, you go, I was doing that the other day. And they start using the fingers and you go, I've never even taught you like how to use the finger. How do you know it's a one? Oh, it's about a one, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I've done that.
Is it?
For sure, I've done that.
100%. How can you possibly know it's a one? You don't know what a one is. You've never measured a one.
I've got some silly ideas of what could be the issue with it, right?
Come on.
Fat is the fingers.
Yeah, so there's a calibration for width of fingers.
Really?
That's one of the first things you do when you learn it is the calibration. So my fingers will be maybe narrower than yours. That's why some people will stand behind the ball. Some people will be over the ball. And then the length, so you have your hand out in front as well, is to do with the speed of the green.
And is that generally arm's length? Is that kind of what's
So for me, 7.5 is when I stand over the ball, arm out in front of me. And then as it gets quicker, I move 2 foot back.
what's the calibration distance?
Yeah, so I take 2 feet back. So my process is I stand over the ball, step out 2 feet,
Yeah.
and then I hold my hand out. That's at 8.5, because 8.5 still reads for me. 9.5 is slightly closer, 10.5. And you would do that on the putting green either before the round, or if it's a big event, you would do that during the week. And it does actually make you aware of how bad some of the golf courses are at reading their own stints.
Would you say that's the issue? Because I know they're doing these AimPoint, what's it called? AimPoint Plus or AimPoint. It's like a fast
AimPoint Express.
AimPoint Express. Would you say that maybe would be the issue with something like that? Would be that people learn too fast, and I mean little things like that. I mean that's quite a lot of calibration.
Until you go and see. I went and saw Jamie Donaldson, who's pretty much the best person done it. Europe. It wasn't that way, but he came down this way. And I went and saw him 2015, I think. I went and saw him. So I've been doing it a long time now. I've never really gone back to see him too many times. I saw him once, got enough of the information. And I think it is one of those things where it's turned into a brand now. And there are things that they offer that I don't think are necessarily that important. I mean, if I went and maybe redid it, I would see the benefits of it. But I think you can learn it, and I'm probably evidence of that you can learn it in one session and go away, practice it. And, I'm lucky I'm a pro, so I spend time around other pros who have done AimPoint, and you probably pick up little things without knowing it. But you go, I forgot about that. So, I'm probably getting reminded of the things I should be doing more often. But generally for amateurs, you learn the calibration at the beginning, you learn how to calibrate the speed of the greens and to work it out. And it's just a logic thing. If you're getting the read and you are standing at your 8.5 and you've got your spirit level down and you're hitting the putts and they're turning early, it's fairly easy to assume that is now a 9.5. So I can work out the speed of the greens that way.
Recalibrate.
Reverse engineer it, yeah. So once you know the information, you can work it out. It's a bit like mathematics, really. Once you know how to do one calculation, you can do it a million different ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the rest of the game is almost trying to take away all those thoughts. You know what I mean? In the sense of when you're over the ball and you're trying to hit a shot, you've done, it's not actually that different. The more I think about it, the more actually it's the same.
That's how I was going to jump in. I was waiting to see where it could go.
I saw it look in your face like, no, it's not, idiot. So, it does make, because you do all that calibration. Say you're 180 yards out, you're on a 5 foot sort of upslope. You're taking that into account, 5-yard upslope. The wind's you're taking that to the read. I had Scott Fawcett on the podcast, and he's a break everything down, try and make it. I think he's really good. I don't use decades to the same strictness as him, but I certainly use some of those principles where you start to use a bit more statistically to choose targets on the greens. So I look back, actually, I had a period, certainly my most successful period on Alps, I was actually drawing little boxes on my yardage book of where my targets were, depending on where flags were, and they were always safe sides. And I was playing to the center of the box. So I was kind of using decade before decade even existed. And I think virtually every good player was doing that. And what Scott was really good at is taking that information and making it into such an easy way for someone to learn. And, going back to what you were saying, I absolutely think you are doing those calculations before you hit shots. You're standing over it on the second hole here, about 190 yards. First thing you're looking at is it uphill, downhill, a couple of yards downhill? Right, where's the wind? Is it out the left? Well, if it's out the left, where's the flag?
what flight am I going to have to hit to be able to get to that flag or hit to my safe spot? Is that wing going to add distance or decrease distance depending on which flight I choose? And I'm taking in all of that information, which is why sometimes it probably seems complicated to amateurs, because they're not maybe taking in as much of that information, and they're not used to doing it. Whereas we're used to. I'm still of the age where you have the yardage book and you're doing the calculations in the book. You're doing the maths as you're going. And I've had people, I've got mates that have added on 40 when they should have taken off 40 in the sun. And look, that's just part and parcel of it.
Yeah.
As much as it does make it sound like you're making golf quite scientific, it is like that.
But the more I was thinking about that in my head, I actually love that side of the game. Like, my game's not pretty good enough to warrant it sometimes, but I love the button and everyone pricing, and I like taking all those factors, because at least then I can walk away from the shot going, well, I've taken all everything in. I just didn't execute the shot. That is what it is. That's fine. I can move on, do that again next time. I'm actually now more on thinking about it, because of the way I frame that, it's actually a complete flip reverse that happens on the putting green. I probably do the least amount of calculations when I putt, and I just go on feel, which some days is really good, but more often than not.
I think anyone who's got a bit of an analytical mind loves AimPoint. From my experience, you get some field golfers that are kind of still in that traditional. They love the spirit of the game, and they're a little bit stubborn in their mindset of, I don't like it because it's got a spirit that we didn't have one of them 30 years ago. So anything that's new, but they're also of the mind where they don't like to video their golf swing. They're still very much like, I just want to feel where it's brought up in the air. Like, I mean, that's great, but even Jack Nicklaus was using video, and he was driving home from a range session to put it on his VCR and holding like rulers up on the TV. So it's nothing new. Even the guys who you'd hold up as poster boys for traditional golf would, if you gave them these tools, absolutely use it. This kind of comes into that argument of, would Jack be a dominant force in today's game? Of course he would, because he'd be in the gym. He was in the gym back in the day. Yeah. He maybe wouldn't be as dominant because he wasn't outworking everyone by as much as he was. Yeah. Tiger's the same. And that's why this era is so kind of clogged up, and there's not much relations out there for it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So everyone's got a perfect opportunity to just go away and work hard on their game and work efficiently with their time, which really, when you think about it, people go, being efficient with your time is something that the pros do. But they've got the most time. They don't need to be efficient with their time. They can sit around for 2 hours in the putting green before doing their session. The average person who's working, who just wants to get an hour in practice, needs to be super efficient with their time if they want to improve.
Makes sense completely. I've sort of annoyingly talked myself around.
I convinced you about actually sharing this.
I hope now at some point we'll do it, and I know if I like it, but I do definitely want to see what it's about and obviously try and do it right. I do like that sort of. That's the annoying part. Like, I look at it, I do like that sort of things, and I can't deny that the least amount of calculations I do is on the putting green, where it's probably needed the most, because you're putting on the ground.
I just remember watching a video with who's the old guy who was a really good putter, Ben Shaw, and he was giving a lesson to someone, and the first thing he did, I'm talking about stroke, anything, he just went, right, find the straight putt, which really is something that you define as an AimPoint characteristic, finding the straight putt. Well, once you can find the straight putt, you can find the breaking putt. So even these field golfers still use it. They're reverse engineering it. They're doing it intuitively, and they might not be doing it in the way that I would define as being, Ben Crenshaw hasn't got his spirit level out, but he's always talked about having the same pace going into the hole, which is an AimPoint characteristic, which means he always has to have the same AimPoint, which by definition means that we was using a form of AimPoint without percentages.
This maybe to challenge just thinking on the point of like something Scott talks about quite a lot, Scott Fawcett, is the idea of having to go through. He likes the thought of it's actually fine to not 3 feet, sorry, 9 inches past the hole. He's okay with 9 inches short as well.
Look, from long distance, I'm not going to be disappointed with 9 inches short. Once statistically I get to 25 feet, I'm trying to hold it.
You get it within a range.
And Scott says this, like, you are trying to hold it. He's never telling people to not try and hold it. He's never telling people to not hit it close to the flag. It's just sometimes it doesn't happen. And if I'm aiming 9 inches past, I'm going to be happy within 2 feet, probably pace. That's going to be a fairly good putt for me, which includes 18 inches short. As long as I'm accepting that the ball isn't always going to go 9 inches past. That's just my goal. I'm referencing whether I've read putt against that pace. So if it comes up 18 inches short and it's bang on line, then I've read it correctly. But for it to be bang on line in a breaking putt means it needs to actually be off the center of the putt. If it gets to the hole and it misses low side or it misses high side and goes 2.5 foot past, I'm still trying to make that same review. Did I read it correct? Well, yes, I did. I just hit it a foot too hard.
So you just take that on to the next.
Yeah, so I'm using it as a reference to review each shot, which is, at the end of the day, feedback is the way that you improve.
Yeah.
And the better your feedback, the more precise your feedback, the quicker that you improve. And as I said, I think it's the most underrated thing people think of in AimPoint. It was the thing that probably revolutionized my putting more, was the way that I was practicing and being aware of it. Transformed how good my pace putt became. 7 foot, 12 foot, 15 foot, my pace control was just so good that the hole was at its biggest. And if I read it even remotely correctly, the ball goes in the hole. Like you say, I think pace is absolutely king. And because AimPoint focuses on the slope from side to side, it looks like you're not thinking about pace.
Sure,
But you are.
Yeah, I think I'm like a kid who refuses to eat his vegetables and has never tried it, and all those sort of things. It is an ignorant standpoint to be like, it's just about line, because like I said, I didn't realise that all the other things were taken into account. Because you can't tell. Getting like on the TV, you can see them sometimes. They'll hold the putter out and they'll have pen marks for that week. So you see them sometimes. Right. Justin Rhodes does it. Yeah, it was his putter. He's got a pen mark. So if it's 14, it comes in here. So that he does the exact, he's trying to make that precision. So he would have been configured for his width of finger. Well, some people even configured right and left handed. I get really deep into it. Yeah.
Because if you're using 3 fingers, you might actually have to configure because one finger's thinner than another. You don't go to that level, but you can go to that level with it.
Wow. Yeah, okay. It's annoying. I was really hoping to bring up a point and you play that. No, but it was never about having an argument about it. But that was never what it was. It was always about, me coming to you, you're the professional, and you describing to me why AimPoint works, because I'm coming out from it.
I just always think, why should someone listen to me when I say that it's right if I can't explain to you why it's right? Sure. At the end of the day, I'm just preaching something that I can't back up. And that's how I've always been. That's how I've stumbled across changing into different swing models. And that's why I left certain coaches and stuff, because my questioning meant I went, well, hang on, no, I don't agree with that. Yeah, some people are very much like Dustin Johnson, do as you're told. I've never been like that. That's probably why I've transitioned into coaching from playing so easily, because I understand it, because I've had to understand it in my own. That's just how my brain works. And if I'm always questioning, why should I react badly when someone questions me?
No, I got one sort of last thing, James. Obviously, like I said, thank you very much for having me down today. It was eye-opening. Hope it's
glad you made it through the snow.
Yeah, just about. Yeah, it's all right. But I know it's going to benefit my game as well to have those points to work on, which I'll be doing in the mirror. My wife will look at me like I'm absolutely mad.
My girlfriend looks like I'm mad. Every reflection I ever find, I'm practicing my setup and my swing.
And to be honest, we spoke more about baseball than we did about golf as well. So that's, as Jay was saying earlier, if hopefully that's still in the podcast, he talks about, doing different sports as a kid. That's case in point of why that's important, because you wouldn't understand what that means otherwise, would you?
So understanding that golf is unique in the fact that we have that forward bend in it, and it really complicates us. We swing on a circle and we're in forward bend, which we don't do for anything else, right? And it complicates it because then you've got this tilted plane, and we think we have to try and create that tilted plane. But actually what we were talking about was, well, if you can swing around you like this, when you tilt forward, it creates the tilted plane. Yeah. So actually you can learn to play golf from up here. You don't have to add that bit in. The added complication is that people get tilted it down, and that happens as a consequence of having a tilted plane and ball position when you're making sure it's relative to the feet you're trying to hit.
Yeah. No, it was brilliant. I had one of those special features. Obviously, you're playing professionally as well.
Yeah.
Top of the order of merit for Sussex and for South.
That's the big
Huge achievement. I mean, how many tournaments did you win? Not sure.
actually. It was 11 or 12.
That's all for it.
We're all looking for what? We're winning pro-ams, and like some pro-ams are bigger than others, and some pro-ams are where you just chuck in sort of 40 quid as a sweep as a pro, and you're kind of looking after the amateurs more, and others that you're there to win. It feels bad to say there's some wins that don't feel like wins, can they not? But I guess I've played at a higher level that you can kind of do go, well, it's another win. It's a nice place to be. Really. When you say something like that, it kind of makes you realise how stupid it sounds. I don't know. I know I'm at about 53 or 54 total pro wins since I turned pro. But I would caveat that with one was on a main tour worldwide. We short out to right into 2017 on one. That to me is the main. If you say how many proper wins have you got, that's a proper win for me. I beat players that are on the European Tour now. So that's to me the pinnacle of where I've been in terms of what I've achieved. And as much as winning the South region was really cool, it's not the same level. It's nice to win and you want to win it. It was part of my goals for last year and I'd love to win it again this year. Yeah, it's not quite the same level. So I just look like that.
Were you going to be playing sort of the same sort of stand this year? Or are you going to go up the level or what's your plan?
So I was actually sitting doing some of my scheduling before you came, and I find it very difficult to try and work out what I'm playing in next year because I'm still trying to grow the coaching. And obviously I've had plenty of years of, it's definitely not financial freedom playing full-time golf. It's very much the opposite. You start the year at like 20 grand down and work your way back to zero if you've had a good year. And I own a flat now with my partner and, you know, there's other things that we want and your priorities change. So coaching now has to take a bit of a lead on that. And if I want to play, then I have to fund it through my coaching and trying to find the right balance between, because I do want to play. Like, I don't think you ever lose that eagerness to play and that want to play, but you also have that guilt of, can I really take a week off to go play that tour? And, you know, could I just play one day pro-am and potentially win £500 or £600? But as I said, it doesn't give you the same buzz because, as I've already said, it doesn't feel like a proper win. That 2017. So really, it depends over these next 3 or 4 months. I'm trying to grow the coaching side online as well as in person. But hopefully it's at a point where I can take some weeks off to go and actually practice, because I'm not thinking that I'm at a level where I can just not practice and go beat some of these guys, especially the national events. We've got some really good players there, players that I've played with higher levels that are in the same gen as me. And you see the weeks that they practice, you're like, Harry Casey on the PGA Championship. Harry Casey was twice on it when I was a very good player, playing the Challenge Tour and then quite made it to do as well. No, you're not beating him if you're not putting in some work. Yeah, you've also got to balance that with putting enough time to coach and get something out of it. And I do enjoy the coaching.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's just there because it's probably not everyone that plays the game in coach.
Yeah, and I think it comes with the more you understand it. So if there's anyone watching the podcast who's like early into their coaching, just stick with it. Like it's something that as you build your knowledge, it used to be that I only like coaching really, really good players because you could talk to them the way that you talk. You know, teaching beginners is actually the best thing I've ever done. It makes you have to really think what you understand,
frame it into their shoots there.
Say something like, that's off playing, and they look at you like, playing was here? And you go, no, this is the plan. So it was nice to hear when you said, you haven't had it explained to you in that simplicity.
Yeah.
Or hopefully I'm doing my job in that respect. And it can only make you a better coach by actually having to challenge yourself the same way you would do when you have to face a different golf course, face different players, you have to adapt to your game. You have that as a coach as well.
Well, yeah, I'm going to make sure the show notes will be links to James is on Skillist as well, which is obviously a great way to communicate. You can be anywhere in the world, so and be able to get in touch with James and he can help you with the game. And equally, like you said, the Skillist stuff really helps when people are here because we used it today to show me very quickly like the difference between where I started and where I finished.
You've got access to those videos now as well. Yeah, if anyone wants a free game evaluation on Skillist, I do offer that as a free one. Just have to follow me on Skillist. So if you've got the link below, then they just have to click on that and follow it, and it gives them a bit of input on their swing.
Yeah, the link will be below. Link to James' socials will be below. He dropped some really good tips on there as well. Like we were saying before, just authentic tips on the golf course. Yeah. Well, I've seen you on there hit some that you weren't happy with how you hit a few of them, and it's like, good, that makes me feel better. That's why you must have done it on purpose.
I try and steer clear of, you see all these quick fixes and quick 10 seconds fix your slice videos. I try not to do those. I try to explain a little bit more, a bit like we've done today, but explain the value of keeping your spine angle the right way. And maybe it comes across as a different way of explaining that, and hopefully someone will watch it and go, oh yeah, that's me. Actually, no one's ever explained it to me that way. And whether they come to have a lesson with me or whether they just go to the range and they find a way to actually hit it better. That's the goal of that stuff, really.
In walking away from today, I know that there's so much I can do just in the mirror at home with my phone at home, which just only people was valuable, especially as I'm not getting to the golf course.
I'm not a big fan of training aids. I've never really have been. I've used them before, but I've never seen them translate too much into a swing. So when someone's got it on, they tend to look good. When they've got it off, they don't tend to look good. So it looks amazing for social media. Yeah, it can make real good changes. Even the guys on tour, you see them using different things, and then you look at their swing and you're that's not changed one little bit. Yeah. Whereas you need a mirror, you need a wall, and a golf ball. You've got those three things, you can improve your game. And most people, unless you're living in somewhere that doesn't have a wall, in which case you've got bigger problems. You probably should be focusing on something other than your golf. If you don't have walls, wife's chucked you out because you play too much golf. Yeah. That might be a bigger problem.
So fulfilling prophecy at that point.
Absolutely. So if you have got some walls, then you're all good to improve the game. And every driving range has walls, bay dividers, and that's the thing that I try and give to people when they're coaching, as well as understanding that life's not perfect. Like, you might want to do 10 minutes standing next to the car, or if you need your training aid and you haven't got it, it's stuffed. But if you know that a straight line is helpful, you can do it leaning against the wall. You could do it leaning against the trolley in Asda. I've done that plenty of times.
Yes, yeah.
Got plenty of weird looks down into my golf.
I love it when you see those ones of guys practicing their golf swing in like the weirdest places. The guy in that clubs.
Yeah, so Ryan actually did a snipped video of me doing that on the trip.
Oh, really?
What he did come up with the idea, but he was like, Sharpe, you're always doing swings. And I just video a few of them.
And comes in the kitchen sometimes and I have my head against the wall like that. I'm sort of working.
That's a good one. She can use it for many, many different reasons.
Exactly. Convenience.
It's holding the roof up. Yeah. That's to improve your golf. That's the main thing. Redesign your house so there's plenty of walls with mirrors right next to it. That's what you want. You want a mirror there.
Oh, yeah. Now we're talking. I do actually need to sort that out. I need to sort out some kind of perfect trade.
The first thing I did when I got in here, actually, someone's broken one of the mirrors, but the first thing I did was buy 2 mirrors from Dunhill. Right. I was like, I can't. More than me deal with this.
What do you
mean? It's massive. Down the line can be helpful, but most people can video and you can see it playing anyway. So I think the face on was massive. Like I said, when we did it, I always show the down the line first because that shows the symptoms. Almost always it's the face on one that shows the causes. And I think that's probably the angle that most people don't ever see if they're on golf swing. It's hardest to get. Right? If you're at a driving range, you can probably balance your club right against the wall and get a video of the face on. You probably need someone else to grab it. And I think when you look at analysis online of top players, it's all down the line. Yes. Very rarely do I see anything from face on. In fact, the first time I really saw any face on videos of Tiger was when Gary Edwin, who does right-sided swing, which is kind of the model that I work towards, did a really cool video on Tiger at Hoylake 06, showing his angles from face on and relating it to what Tiger had worked on through his career, and just go, yeah, it's absolutely spot on.
Yeah, I think it was eye-opening, like I said. And I really appreciate it. Hopefully I'll come back at some point and do some of the AimPoint stuff.